Today I want to talk about some ways to get kids and toddlers to eat healthier. Now, whether you're on a paleo, Whole30, or AIP diet, or if you're just trying to eat healthier in general, if you have kids, you know it's a little bit of a struggle trying to get them to eat the same way. Kids and vegetables are kind of like this. They don't always seem to match up, but there are ways that you can get your kids to eat more vegetables and to eat a lot healthier foods than a lot of the processed junk foods that they may be used to. So here are 19 tips that I've used with my own kids over the years, and I know several friends have used with their kids as well, that have really helped get our kids to eat healthier. Number one is to keep the ingredients secret. If you have broccoli inside something and nobody knows, you don't have to project that and tell the whole entire world that there is broccoli inside of this particular meatball or whatever it is. If you don't mention it, they may not even know, and then you can continue on. Sometimes they can pick it out, but if you don't make a big deal out of it, they may not know. Number two is to make healthier versions of familiar foods. There are great ways to make things like sweet potato fries or chicken nuggets. You can make it in a healthier paleo version, or you may be able to find something that's similar to something that they know, but maybe rethink it a little bit. And maybe like potato and cauliflower cakes. They're still kind of that mouthfeel of chewy, but maybe not something that you would get in the grocery store, but they can still take it and dip it in ketchup and things like that. So just be creative like that, but also you can recreate their familiar foods. So number three is to also introduce some unfamiliar foods. Kids tend to go with what they know. So if you never introduce them to different tastes and flavors, they're not going to want to try them at all. So if every so often you give them a curry or some different kind of spices that they may never have had, they might not like it right away, but continually exposing them to that may make them a little bit more adventurous in the future. And you never know, they may actually like what you've given them. Number four is one I think I learned from the book French Kids Eat Everything, and it's the concept of the thank you bite. This one is where if you've made a meal and you put it down in front of your child, they have to take one bite. They don't have to like it, they don't have to eat any more, but they have to at least take one bite. And often this actually leads to them eating more because they are kind of against the idea of eating it, but then once they eat it, they love it. So the key concept here though is to not make a big deal out of it if they do like it. So say they take it, they say, that's actually pretty good. Don't be like, whoa, I told you so. Don't do that. Just ignore it and just go on with your conversation and everything. And before you know it, they may have eaten the whole thing. Tip number 5 is to have the kids actually help make the meals. Now, when you have a little toddler, this is going to look a little bit different than if you had a teenager, but either way, kids seem to be more invested in the meals when they are able to help. So if they've had a little part of it, even if it's setting the table, they tend to eat a lot more. Check out Kitchen Stewardship's Kids Eat Real Food course, which is the one that we use to actually teach my kids how to cook. And it's been great because they'll like to help out every so often in the kitchen, and they're so proud of what they've made. Tip number 6 is to have the kids help plan out your meals. Maybe look through cookbooks or Pinterest or the internet and find out some recipes that look good to them and to you, and that you guys maybe can compromise on to make for the following week. Even toddlers can do this because they can point it out and just say they want something. And if you maybe have a teenager, maybe have them plan out a week. They can take a week at a time, or maybe they can do a night. Say you get to plan out Tuesday night, and maybe even make the meal. But again, it's the same kind of thing as when they cook the meal. They're more invested in it when they've had a part in either planning or cooking it. Tip number 8 is to be prepared to ignore your kids if they complain or throw a tantrum about a food, and be prepared to have them not eat dinner. This has happened with especially my younger son quite often, where he's like, I don't like this, and we're just like, all right, well, you don't get anything. And then he goes to bed and he still survives. I mean, he gets plenty of food. It's not like he's going to die because he hasn't had one meal, but it's just, you're gonna have to go through moments like this, and it's not like it's the end of the world. If they do this for a long period of time, then you may have to start intervening and providing some things that they will eat. But most kids, I would say, tend to do this like a meal or two, and then they kind of give in, and then they realize they don't actually hate what they are complaining against. I mean, half the time my child does this, he hasn't even tasted it, even though I've tried to do the whole thank you bite thing. So It's a game of give and take when you're a parent. You know, some battles you want to fight, some you don't. But I find that, like, you know, just ignoring them when they throw these unnecessary tantrums seems to help in the long run. Tip number 9 is if you really want your child to eat something, you can provide a dessert bribe. I don't know if this is necessarily the healthiest in the long run kind of thing, because you may cause some need for desserts, I don't know. But I try to do like healthy desserts, so like watermelon or maybe some bananas that have been like cooked in a pan with some cinnamon. Or some fresh berries or something like that. And my kids tend to eat everything on their plate if they have a reason to eat watermelon or whatever. Again, I think a lot of times the kids are just trying to explore their worlds and like go against their boundaries. And it's not that they necessarily hate what they're eating, they just are rebelling to rebel. And so then if they get something at the end for doing it, then they tend to eat it. Again, choose your battles on this one. This may not be one that you want to do, but it's an idea. Tip number 10 is not to project your own feelings onto what your child may want or not want. An example of sardines. When I was growing up, I hated sardines. Like, well, I don't even think I ever tasted them. I just smelled my dad eating them, and I was like, no, don't give them to me. Like, I didn't want them near me, didn't want to smell them, anything. And so, as an adult, I have actually learned to love them, but I assumed my child would not like them, right? But turns out that they both love them because I did not project my feelings onto them, and I just kind of gave it to them and just stayed back and didn't say anything. And turns out they love them. So don't project what you think they're gonna like or not like, because you may be surprised. That goes with things like vegetables as well, because you don't want to be like, all right, well, I know it's broccoli, because you universally think broccoli is like a hated vegetable by all kids. Your kids may love it, and if without the idea in their head that they may hate it, they will know to hate it. But if you put that idea in their head, there's that little inkling, seedling of doubt, they may start to hate it after that. So just try to not project your own feelings onto them. And if you are serving something that you may not particularly love, don't say anything about it, and try not to talk about how much you don't like it at dinner, because you don't know what kind of feelings you're projecting onto your child and making them change their opinion of things. Tip number 11 is to keep trying with things. I especially find this with my younger son, that some days he will love something and then the next day he hates it. And then he'll love it and then he hates it. And I don't understand what the difference is. Again, I think it's a lot of that rebelling, trying to push against boundaries kind of thing. But even if your child just continually says that he hates it, keep trying, especially if you're going to serve it for yourself anyway, because they may change their mind someday and love it. Tip number 12 is to ask your kids what they think of something. Sometimes they don't actually give you an opinion, but like you can ask them, hey, like, what did you think of this meal? Did you think it was good? Should we serve it again? This is kind of along the same lines as buy-in with making and planning a meal, because then they feel like their opinion's heard and they feel a little bit more excited about these meals. And if you're going to say like, oh, okay, well, you hated that, maybe we won't make that again, but you loved that particular dish, should we make that again? So I think being part of the conversation really makes them feel proud and makes them want to eat certain things as well. Number 13 is kind of a tie back with like ignoring them when they are not trying to eat something, but it's to not give into tantrums. Obviously, if you have a child with like sensory issues or something like that, then you're gonna have a different situation. But this is just for kids that are just simply refusing and throwing tantrums, crying on the floor because they don't want to eat something. Don't give in to them if you can help it. If it's been several nights, then yeah, you may have to. But if it's like the first night, then just say, hey, like, you don't have to eat. Number 14 is don't force them to eat it either, because then they may resent you and may not want to ever touch the thing because it represents something like not good feeling to them. So like, don't say you have to eat it, like there's starving children in China or whatever it was my parents used to say. If they're not going to want to eat it, just don't make them eat it. You can always put it into a container and serve it later if they want it, or use it for yourself later as a snack or something. Number 15 is to make sure that you do write down their favorite meals, so that way you do have a list of go-to kind of things that they will eat. So maybe you're gonna make some sort of protein that they don't necessarily like, but you know they love this side dish. So that way you have some stuff that they will eat, and you're gonna know that they're gonna get nourished and they're not gonna starve, and that they're gonna get exposed to some other things, but maybe not necessarily eat the whole meal, but you have those favorite things. And then it's also handy in times of like birthdays and other special occasions. Number 16 is to add some favorite things to dishes that they may not necessarily love by themselves. Now, for example, the other day I made Sloppy Joe's paleo style, so it's just the Sloppy Joe like ground beef tomato mixture, and I put it over mashed cauliflower. My kids aren't necessarily, you know, raving fans over this one, but I took a note from my mom back in the day. She used to chop up hot dogs and put it into this dish, and I was like, all right, let me try that. So I chopped up some hot dogs and put it in the Sloppy Joe's, and my kids loved it. So it's just a different kind of way of thinking about it, but to add some things to a particular dish that they may be meh about, then they will love it, is just another way of looking at it. Tip number 17 is don't send the overly weird things to school or any place where other kids may be that will make fun of them. So like those sardines that I mentioned before, or even some things like seaweed snacks, for example, may be perceived as a little weird by other kids, and the kids may make fun of your children. And you don't want that, because even though your children may love it, if they have those feelings of being, you know, teased about it, they may associate the two together and then never want to eat it again. So I just try to stay away from all the weird stuff at school, and we only serve those in the privacy of our house so that my kids can have it and enjoy it and not have to worry about peer pressure or teasing. Tip number 18 is to use sauces. I've said this a lot with other things, but sauces are really a kid's friend because they can dip and change the flavor of a lot of things. So things like vegetables especially, sauces can really make them a lot more palatable for kids. So you can make sauces, or you can buy salad dressings or sauces that you feel good about, and then serve those to your kids, and you'll find that they're a lot more apt to eat what you're serving. And then tip number 19 is to try different dishes with ingredients that they may not love. So for a long time, we ate Brussels sprouts with bacon fat and cranberries, and then drizzled some maple syrup on top. And everybody loved it, but then I think my kids kind of got bored of it. And so they kept on complaining every single time I gave them Brussels sprouts after that. But I found a recipe that uses almond butter instead. So instead of just serving the bacon cranberry one, we'll do the almond butter one every so often as well, and my kids love that one. And then sometimes my husband and I want the bacon cranberry one, but my kids want the almond butter one. It's not really that much harder to make both dishes. You just cut the Brussels sprouts up, mix it with some bacon fat, and then put one tray with the cranberries, and then add almond butter to the bowl, mix up the rest of the Brussels sprouts and put them on a separate tray, and then you have 2 trays that you can put in the oven. They cook the same amount of time, but then mom and dad and kids are both happy. So just look for different recipes that incorporate those ingredients and try them, because you never know what combination they may love or get sick of, and then you'll have to try again. But just keep trying. And I think that's a really important thing to note. All right, so that's all 19 tips. Good luck with your children. I know how hard they can be. If you haven't already, get the password for my Paleo freebie library. The link will be below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more. I'll be taking next week off to spend time with my family for Thanksgiving, but I will be back the week after that. See you then.